Okay, well, hello everyone. Yeah, good morning to everyone, and thanks for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you in our company for the next hour and a half. This is the first big event of 2022, so the Bristol Innovators Group event. It's great to see a number of familiar faces and some new ones join the call as well. Yeah, really good to have you with us. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get into the call. If you're not currently on mute, if you could pop yourselves on mute, that would really help. And it's always nice to see faces. So if you're happy to turn your camera on, we'd love to see your face and be able to wave at you and things like that. We use the chat today, so please feel free to put a little intro in the chat to who you are and what you do, and wish us all happy new year or whatever else you'd like to do. We really want to make these sessions kind of about connecting with each other as well, so please feel free to, if you recognize other people we haven't seen for a while, to say hello and all that sort of thing as well. And we'll keep it nice and simple, so we're going to get some questions and Q&A and a bit of conversation going, but we'll just use the chat to compensate with that. So no Q&A functions or anything fancy going on today. So I'll just say who I am quickly, then we've got three hosts this morning, so I'll ask them to say hello as well. So yeah, James Snellgrove. I work with Innovate UK Edge Southwest and also with Business West in Bristol. I'm one of the co-founders of the Bristol Innovators Group. And Rob, do you want to say hello?
Sure, thanks, James. Hi, everyone. I've met lots of you before, but not all of you. My name's Rob Sheffield, Director of Blue Green Learning based in Bristol, and like James, one of the co-founders of this just over 2-year-old Bristol Innovators Group network. Nice to see you.
Thanks, Rob. And Hannah, do you want to say hello?
Hiya, I'm Hannah. I'm kind of new to here. I'm the president of the Innovation Society at Bristol. So I'm still at uni doing my master's year. But yeah, I'm here to interview you guys and also connect our students, which sadly don't think there's many in this call today, but gradually, hopefully, we'll build up and make a bit more of a connection between the students and the big society, or community.
Thanks, Hannah. Yeah, we're always kind of trying to connect up between the generations, really, and be aligned with those new innovators coming through. So we have really good agenda for today. So we're going to be talking all about leading disruptive innovation, and we'll hear from Rob a little bit about some of the context of that and what it can mean and where the term was coined. And we have three amazing guests with us as well who are going to share their stories and talk a little bit about their projects that they're doing in leading disruptive innovation. I'll just say who they are and then we'll get into the kind of conversations quite quickly. But we have Julia Ross, who is the Chief Executive at the NHS Bristol, North Somerset and South Gloucestershire CCGs. So Julia was giving us a wave, so thanks, Julia, good to see you. And we have Jessie Wilde, who's the Deputy Project Director at the Bristol Housing Festival. Hi, Jessie, give us a wave, yeah. And we have Lara Lalemi, who's the CEO of Creative Tuition Collective. I can't see Lara on my screen, but I'm sure she's waving somewhere. So great, thank you to you three for joining us, and we really look forward to getting into the conversations with you about how you're going about leading disruptive innovation in your work and your projects. So we'll have some conversations with those guys, and there will be a chance to ask questions, and also we'd love for everyone to share some different stories and please get involved in a bit of the conversation. We're very much looking at disruptive innovation from a kind of leadership perspective, and how do we kind of encourage and enable innovation and successful innovation, about kind of creating the conditions for innovation to thrive. And that's also a really important motive for us as the Bristol Innovators Group as well. You know, we are all about trying to support the innovation ecosystem of Bristol as a city. So as Hannah was referring to as well, we're really passionate about connecting up with the younger generation and people sharing stories. I was thinking about this morning, and I think it's maybe true to say we're a little bit like a community centre for innovation in Bristol. We're sort of a community-led group, and all really passionate about the subject. Just to say a few more words on Bristol Innovators Group before we move on to Rob. So many of you I know have been involved in the group for over a year now, maybe since we first started, maybe came to that first event we held back in person before we all got locked down and had to deal with the disruption of the pandemic in October 2019. That was when we first met, and we've sort of evolved the tagline of the group really to be connect, learn and do. And that sort of summarizes what we try and aim for in the group. We have 600 plus members in LinkedIn. And yeah, we run regular events just like this. We have some guest speakers, international authors, and we try and support civic projects as well. So yeah, I might just leave it at that and hand over to Rob, who's going to give us a little bit of context around disruptive innovation.
Thank you, James. I'm just going to drop into chat all the link to the Bristol Innovators Group LinkedIn group, if you don't know it. I think lots of you are members already, but there you go. I just dropped it in, and we're up to 637 members. So we're gonna get on with the three talks in a moment all. But look, we just thought we would give you a couple of minutes background on this term disruptive innovation, which it's one of those popular phrases, I think, in business, which has come to mean lots of things, lots of different things, maybe like big change, radical change, change at scale, maybe. If it originally came out, and lots of you will know this, in a mid-90s article by Harvard academic, a guy called Clayton Christensen. And he was really talking about competitive markets, first of all. And he was talking about the process by which smaller organizations, kind of on the edge of the market, come in with fewer resources, offer something, usually at a lower price, probably spot a segment of a market, a target audience that others haven't, might offer it in a completely different way, a new business model. And because the big established organizations are busy serving their main and profitable customers, those big organizations don't respond. Gradually, these new organizations at the margins, they might get more market share, they'll up their quality, and they start to get mainstream customers. And when the big established players have to respond, that's when disruptive innovation has occurred. But they kind of slightly sneak in under the radar. That's what Christensen meant by all of this. So if anyone remembers Blockbuster, that's kind of what Netflix did, maybe. And also people talk about economy cars by Toyota and Hyundai, doing things in similar ways. So there are lots of similar examples. And I don't think that's particularly what we're going to talk about today. I think what we are going to talk about today is very different insights from housing, from education, from healthcare. And we hope that you might get some insights that might even be useful, right, in your work, and might be provocative and stimulating as well. So I think let's get into that. And first of all, I think we are going to welcome Julia Ross. Hello, Julia. It is lovely to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Rob. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm going to change my view on Zoom all to speaker view. And do that if you want to. You'll get us as speakers popping up in a bigger way.
Or don't.
or don't. Yes, it can be terrifying to see myself big on screen as well. So, Julia, we've got about 15 minutes, I think, to talk through this a bit. You're going to be leaving, Julia, sometime kind of soon after 11. So I think we'll also have 5 minutes Q&A, maybe from the audience for you. So everyone, it would be great if you might have some wondering, some questions, some things you want to check out with Julia, drop them in the chat, or we'll just get you to put your hands up and ask them once we're done. Julia, it would be great maybe to start with, if you can tell us a bit about your role, but also just a bit of background and context on these enormous changes that are in process in healthcare in England.
Okay, well, I should start by saying I am definitely the older generation of innovator. So I have been in the NHS for, I think, 33 years now. I started my working life actually as a teacher and then transitioned into the NHS. And I'm going to be transitioning out very soon, so I'm taking the opportunity of the current changes to go and do some more well, consultancy-based stuff. So I've got lots to learn from some of you guys. So the background to some of the changes in the NHS. So first of all, the NHS is a monolith, as you probably know. It's a very big organisation. It used to be second biggest employer in the world, only behind the Chinese army, and I think it's dropped to about the third or fourth now, but it's huge. And people who use NHS services sort of assume, I think, that the NHS is one thing, but it's not. It's made up of lots of smaller parts. So, for example, our hospitals, which of course are very visual to the public and very much, I think, you know, are totemic of the NHS in the public view. Our hospitals are big organisations, big employers, employing thousands of staff. And that's at one end. We then, in BNSSG, we have a big community provider who covers the whole of Bristol, North Somerset and South Gloucestershire. But each of our general practice providers, for example, is its own small business, often employing very few people, having to make a profit in order to pay their partners. And although they're fully funded and commissioned by the NHS, they don't provide private services. They are actually independent organisations. And then the other piece, and then I'll say something about what we're trying to do now, Rob. And then the other piece is that for forever, since 1948, when the NHS was created, general practice has been outside that in the way I've just described, but really embraced within the NHS. But local social care, of course, has been under the leadership and funding of local government. And so there's a real fissure between health and social care. Why does any of that matter? Well, because if you're a person who actually needs care, increasingly in our world, which is getting older, a lot like me, I'm a 60s girl, I'm a baby boomer, you know, we increasingly need a whole range of services to wrap around to meet our needs. And so what the NHS is trying to do through this thing called integrated care systems is to get every part of the health system, of social care and the voluntary sector as it relates to health and care, working as though it were one. That's a massive, massive change and challenge. And by the way, this isn't the first time that we've tried to do that. So the NHS has reorganized itself. I think this is my 7th reorganization that I've gone through since, as I said, since coming into the NHS in 1988. So the ambition is to get all of our services focused on the needs of the people we serve and working as one rather than in its organisational silos. I think that's probably enough for now, Rob.
This is just enormous change, isn't it, Julia?
It's huge, yeah.
So to give an example, in Bristol, North Somerset, South Gloucestershire, we're talking about those, you know, local government, NHS, relevant voluntary sector organisations serving a population of kind of around 1 million.
Just over 1 million. And as an NHS commissioner, so that doesn't include local government funding, but it does include funding for all NHS services, apart from very high specialist services. As a commissioner, I have a budget of just about £1.5 billion. But bearing in mind that both of our hospital trusts, so that's University Hospitals Bristol and Western and North Bristol Trust, about 45% of their income comes from specialist services. So that's on top of the resource that I give them.
So this is also, I guess, this is not quick change we're talking about here. We know it's backed up also by legislation from the government to support it. Just to get a sense of what's happened so far, I mean, what is new and different that has actually happened so far? Because I guess we're on a path to making all of this happen over time.
Yeah, so there are a number of examples, but I'm going to share one of the kind of most exciting and the thing that I think is the most innovative and will make the most difference. So as I described, all of the different bits of service work in their own silo, but when we started as a clinical commissioning group, we were really clear that we wanted to create in the community what we called a yin to the hospital's yang. Now, if I explain what I mean by that, you will hear on the news all the time us talking about how busy hospitals are. Please don't come to A&E unless you really are, dying, etc., etc. Well, and as I described, that in the psyche of the public, hospitals are the NHS, but of course they're not. The NHS is made up of many different parts, and people who need services, majority don't need hospitals, right? But hospitals in the psyche are there. So we were really clear that we wanted to create an entity in the community that could, if you like, hold its own with the acute sector. What we call the hospitals is the acute sector, such that we can really help people stay independent and well in the community. The problem with the community is that it's so fragmented, really small services. I talked about general practice, but we have really small community services, we have small voluntary sector services, we have small social care services. And so we needed to get it to operate as one. So we've introduced what we call integrated care partnerships at local level. So we have 6 across the NSSG. And each of those partnerships is led by a GP, which is great news because historically GPs tend to be a little bit outside the NHS and operate a little bit outside the NHS, but they're all GP led. And what we have done in each of those partnerships is bring together the community provider, general practice in that area, local social care in that area, and our mental health services in that area, together with the voluntary sector, to create a partnership whereby they work as one team. And one of the most exciting things about that is from the 1st of April, they will be providing community mental health services as a single entity as opposed to different parts. So I'm really excited about that because I think this is game changing for people who actually need our care.
And I guess because we're talking about system change really here, aren't we, Julia, and system leadership, but also localities have different needs. So there is something, isn't there, like your example there about actually finding out about and meeting the needs that are different in different places.
Yeah, and of course that's been a critical part of it. So one of the exciting things we've been able to do is to give each of the localities some really rich data about their local population. I mean, to be fair, our GPs know their population better than anyone else, because they work with them every day. But we've been able to give them some really rich data. Through COVID, this has been so important. So, for example, if I take the vaccination programme, we have some communities who the NHS typically doesn't have much contact with, and we haven't been good at reaching them. So if I give you some examples, it might be the Somali community in inner city Bristol. It might be the sort of more socially deprived, white socially deprived group in South Bristol, but also we've got big population in Western, in North Somerset, but also people like our Eastern European population across the northern arc of Bristol, you know, they don't typically, Eastern European populations typically are quite suspicious of vaccinations as a thing. It's quite a deep philosophical thing. Working through our localities, we've been able to engage with community leaders and community groups and to find new ways of delivering vaccinations that have enabled many more of those populations to get vaccinated than we would ever have done before. So COVID has also been, for us, actually a massive catalyst in innovation.
Of course, and as you're kind of giving these examples, Julia, I'm thinking, wow, and I'm thinking, you know, I'm thinking about the potential of a system for making huge change at system level, but also the integrated care partnerships at a more local level. I'm sure there's lots of learning here about leadership and that it hasn't stopped. What have you learned so far about the kind of collaborative leadership, you know, needed to make this happen?
Yeah, well, of course, systems thinking helps us a lot because it isn't about one person and it isn't about a leadership team. It's about getting that kind of almost social movement of people who really believe in and are committed to a change. And that's been, you know, that's been huge. So how you get change to be owned by the people who have to actually do it has been a huge challenge for us. And you're right, we have the big system. The system that I lead is across the whole of Bristol, North Somerset and South Gloucestershire, as you said, at a 1 million+ population level. But by taking this locality focus, we've really enabled people at the front line of care who, let's face it, often have very unsatisfactory experience of delivering care for all sorts of reasons. It's enabled them to have the ownership and the drive. And that is where you know, real innovation happens. I'm clear that my job is to set out a landscape to create a condition for change. And that's through, we've created a vision and an ambition that everybody really buys into. But we have no chance of delivering that at my level. I've had to put pieces in place and then allow it to run. And one of my biggest learnings is I can't control that. So, you know, I've set something off here and it's exciting and it's delivering in ways that perhaps we couldn't have imagined. And it's not delivering in ways we might have wanted it to, because actually that's not where the energy and the focus is coming. But I really believe in the big vision. So I have confidence that over time, it will get bigger and bigger, a bit like a snowball. That momentum will continue to deliver. So my job is to light blue touch paper and get out of the way, but to keep checking that the touch paper's lit and that people are energized and empowered to make change. And I've also learned, Rob, that I have a real passion and ambition for large scale change, for big, really big, meaningful transformation. And one of the things I've learned over my 30+ years doing this work, because I've always been in innovation and change in the NHS, is actually small changes add up to big changes. Sometimes I've been dissatisfied with that in my career, but I've learned that actually, if you keep the momentum, those small changes gather pace like a snowball, and that's how you get actually big change.
Yeah, and you feel a sense of momentum, you feel a shift, things are happening. I imagine. Yeah,
and it's exciting because you're not the only one rolling down the hill. You know, you've got lots of people alongside you rolling down the hill, creating their own snowball.
There's so much here, Julia, but just because of time, final question. I mean, what are, for you, what are the kind of key challenges and maybe opportunities coming up next? Because some of the work has happened, but there's still plenty to be done.
Oh, there's loads more to be done. Let me be clear. So I've probably referenced some of the challenges. So one is that people are often committed to their organisation. And we're trying to change the focus from your organisation to the people we jointly serve. by the way, don't get me wrong, everybody working in the NHS does it because they want to make a difference to people. You know, nobody goes in because they like North Bristol Trust. They go in because they want to make a difference for people. But getting us all focused on the same ambition and energy, or at least aligned ambition and energy, I should probably say better. You know, that's a challenge, particularly at the moment where every organisation is so challenged. So we are really facing a very difficult time in the NHS, with radically increased demand, which we don't completely understand, but also quite a lot of reduced capacity, which has come from challenges around COVID and so on. So there's a lot of focus on people's own organisation, but we're asking them to focus beyond that and outside that. So I suppose the biggest thing I've talked about, obviously aligned vision and so on, but the relationships are everything. And actually you find that people change because they relate well, they're connected well, they engage well, they believe in and own the same things. And that brings people together and enables that kind of generative change.
Thanks, Julia. I think we could talk much more, but let's James, I'll hand over to you, and maybe there's some questions from the wider group, questions or wonderings. Yeah,
sure. Thanks, Rob, and thanks, Julia. That's just absolutely fascinating, and yeah, really good to hear your insights into the whole kind of systems change and, you know, the kind of current status, I suppose, and challenges within the NHS and the context of the pandemic, and clearly a very challenging environment. To sort of wish you the best of the best, really. But yeah, we've had some questions come through, so I'll let the people who've asked the questions ask them. So Charlie, you had the first one in there. So I'll just let you unmute yourself and ask Julia your question.
Hi, Julia. Yeah, it seems obviously there's a huge disruption going on in the NHS, particularly around the fact that the NHS seems to be becoming less siloed, I guess, in terms of its position in a particular place, and how there's a focus now on sort of total life care and what are the interventions that the NHS can make earlier, with alongside other departments in councils, etc., to mitigate risks that might come further down the line. So I just wondered what the how is the NHS working with placemaking initiatives to help to maybe fend off some of the problems that they see coming down the line earlier in the process to ease, I guess, the stress and pressure on GPs and hospitals as well.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. And I don't know, let me just check with you. When you talk about placemaking, what do you mean?
I think I just mean quality of life in a particular place. We're working with Solihull a little bit on trying to flatten the curve between, you know, in Solihull, for instance, if you live in a rich part of Solihull, you have a life expectancy 18 years beyond those poor people in Solihull. So I just wondered how is the NHS looking at a whole area and thinking, right, where can we be of most use, and also how can we get ideas and challenges from other parts of placemaking teams, I guess, to try and work together to solve some of those issues.
I think you're asking three things. So one is how we're working at a local level. The second is how we're bringing care earlier, so how we're doing more in the prevention, proactive space. And I think the third one then was about how we're involving our local communities. So perhaps one of the biggest gaps in the NHS over many years has been that focus on prevention, and particularly the focus on the important role of local communities. So we've for a long time been trying and not always succeeding as brilliantly as we should at engaging with the local authority, so being combined with local councils. But what we certainly haven't done as much of is engaging with community leaders and community groups. And what we've definitely discovered through the pandemic is just the power of that, you know. So as I described earlier, our vaccination program would not be where it is and we've hit 84% of vaccinations for the eligible population at this moment. We wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the fact that we've had our imams working with us to attract our Muslim populations for their vaccinations. It wouldn't be there if we hadn't been working with Amazon in North Bristol to help encourage some of our Eastern European colleagues. So I could give you many examples over this last period. And I think that's, Charlie, where the magic is going to happen, because what we've had to do that is we've had to give away some of our power. So instead of the NHS designing how we do that vaccination programme, we've said, well, look, Mr. Imam, you know much better this target population than we do. So you decide where it's going to be, when it's going to be, how it's going to be advertised, and we'll just turn up and put vaccine in people's arms. And that letting go of control of the NHS, I think, is going to be really important, particularly in what you're raising is so important, which is about how do we work with people as assets, not just as needs. And the NHS hasn't been good at that. And that's where you start to get that real preventive focus, that proactive focus, which is absolutely at the heart of what our integrated care partnerships are now trying to do. But it's a massive cultural shift for the NHS. And we're making some great progress in inner city and East Bristol. Our integrated care partnership has set up a really fantastic and game-changing approach to co-design, where they're enabling their local people to tell them how they want services to run and where they want them to run and what sort of focus they want them to take. And this is having a massive impact in terms of community mental health.
Just one other quick question, if I could. I know we want to move, we've got others to hear from, but do you think the pandemic is, in a way, has kind of helped the NHS share some of the burden of people's health with people? So people are now much more in control of their own health. They're becoming digitally transformed in terms of how they monitor their own health, and the vaccine rollout has helped the NHS to sort of, because I think for a long time the NHS was so good that people were able to go, well, my health is a responsibility of the NHS, because I can just turn up at a doctor or a hospital and go, what's wrong with me? Fix me for free. Whereas now there seems to be a much more, the ability to maybe put control of people's own health in their own hands, and share some of that burden that's always fallen on the NHS.
I wish I could say yes. I don't think the answer is yes. I think it's more complex and complicated than that. I think we're on a journey and we're making some moves towards that. But Charlie, we have to acknowledge as well that there's a real cultural dynamic in that. So it's not just about what the NHS does and thinks, it's about what we as society think. And it's been really fascinating. I know we'll need to move on, but it's been really fascinating to see through the pandemic, the public reaction to the NHS and how it's changed. But what I think I still think, and you see it in the kind of complaints that I see about primary care, where people feel that they don't get the access they want to primary care. I still don't think we're anywhere close, either the population or the NHS really believing that people are individually responsible for their own care, and the NHS can only do what it can do. So I think we've got a long way to go, Charlie, but we're definitely on the journey.
Lovely. Thanks, Julia.
I think we're going to move on all. It's such a huge topic, Julia. It's not going anywhere, is it? I mean, it's going to be with us
for a long time.
For a long time. Thank you for joining us, James. I think it's over to you and to introduce Jessie.
Yeah, thanks, Rob, and thanks again, Julia. Yeah, it's really super interesting. Just by my comment on the whole thing, I think is here we're not talking about kind of product innovation, business innovation, technological innovation. We're talking about all of those things all together, and we're really talking about this kind of idea of systems innovation. And yeah, encourage anyone who's not heard of that term to have a look into that. It's the kind of combination between systems thinking approaches and innovation. It's a really fascinating subject. And someone I think is also doing systems innovation is Jessie Wilde. So hello to Jessie.
Hello everyone.
Thanks for joining us, Jessie. Really appreciate it. So Jessie, you are the Deputy Project Director for the Bristol Housing Festival. And I just wonder if you could just set the scene a little bit and tell us about the Bristol Housing Festival and your role.
Yeah, absolutely, of course. So essentially the Bristol Housing Festival, in a nutshell, for those of you that don't know, was set up in 2018. And essentially it was kind of looking at the housing crisis in Bristol and recognizing that there was a problem, but it wasn't really just about housing. It wasn't just that we don't quite have enough housing. It's actually about how housing is distributed, how it's used. It's about the climate challenge. It's about the ecological challenge. It's about the fact that in construction we have a skills shortage coming down the line. It was all these sort of collective issues. And so when me and my business partner got involved in this field, essentially, because I'm not this is my big secret, I'm not a construction expert. I never worked in housing before. This isn't my forte, if it were, as it were. Actually, my kind of background's more in partnership building and partnership working and bringing experts together to solve problems, which is, just applying this to the housing sector. And so what the Housing Festival do is essentially that. We are, for want of a better word, a convener. We're an enabler, an irritant if you speak to the wrong people. We're the people that kind of get involved and have conversations, pull people together, hold very, very high values for different build projects, and essentially try and push for innovation to be used in build projects, for particularly something called modern methods of construction, or known as MMC, which is a whole different way of building homes. So instead of building them sort of brick on brick in a field, this is more about factory produced homes. So turning home building into more of a product manufacturing process. And actually that has a real interesting step change possibility for the way the housing industry operates and works. And so we see in that kind of opportunity, in that change, a real opportunity to start to think about, actually, how do we do housing and think about housing as a holistic challenge? So it's taking into account the stresses and pressures and strains on our NHS, on our GPs, on our local authorities, on our climate, on our et cetera, and actually, can you use housing as a lever? If you change some of the values, if you change some of the sort of objectives in why you're building a housing and how you're building housing, can you use it in order to start to address some of those wider, more kind of broad challenges? But that takes innovation, but more than just the sort of technological innovation, as you were talking about, the systems thinking, it takes a change in the way that we enable innovation to happen. And that's where we find most of our work goes into. It's not about finding the innovators, because all the solutions actually, I think, honestly exist. It's about helping them to actually be used in the situation that we're looking at.
And I think sort of you're echoing what Julie was saying as well about kind of those relationships and fostering that kind of collaboration, really. And I think that's really what the Housing Festival does really, really well, is you're kind of bringing together, the kind of established organisations of the city, the constructors, the builders, the policymakers, but also it feels like often those community organisations or those passionate individuals, and kind of convening that space. And I guess sometimes that maybe makes you feel a bit like a referee in those situations, but I don't know. I think one of the things really interesting for the Housing Festival is you bring this whole approach, which is really founded in some core values and kind of optimism and hope for the future. And I'm just thinking about how important you feel like that's been in terms of defining what the Housing Festival is about and your values, how important that's been your approach.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been absolutely essential. And I think you're absolutely right. I don't think I've ever used the term referee, but that's almost exactly what it is at points. I think there's a real kind of, whenever you start talking about housing, it's very, very personal. And even when you talk to people about the system of housing or housing in the whole of the UK, immediately people go, it start to equate it in their own heads with, well, where do I live? what do I own or not? And that's got emotional implications. So it's really hard to have a conversation about housing in any context without it being personal for the people in the room, even if their professional role is such that they're above their own personal kind of housing situation. And what that means is that when we're talking about housing, if you look, you don't have to look very far at all, but if you look at kind of social media or even the newspapers and that kind of thing, actually what you get is a very negative and actually quite, for want of a better phrase, a bit icky sort of environment to be working in. So to stereotype, you get the evil developers, you get the incompetent local authorities, you get the local residents who are just difficult, and NIMBYs, which stands for not in my backyard. So you just get all these sort of difficult people, and actually people aren't difficult. They just have their own agendas. And so for us, it's been really, really, really important to think about actually, how do you bring those different groups together and start to break down across some of those silos? And the way that we have sort of gone about doing that is, as you say, to hold highly this idea of values, and we have kind of 4 key values. It's going to be I'm going to mess them up now, but it's hopeful, courageous, generous, and there's another one that I can't remember, which is awful, isn't it? But United. Yes, absolutely, well done.
I was just going to put the link to the website because I'm just looking at it.
Thank you so much. I always miss one. It's always different each time, but I always miss one. But actually trying to make sure that every conversation we have, every piece of evaluation that we do, every project that we support and facilitate, every event that we put on, it's all about kind of pushing for those values and trying to create, again, excuse the phrase, but for want of a better phrase, a platform where we can have a grown-up conversation about the real challenges and how we're going to move forward with those.
Yeah, that's great, Jessie. And I think everyone on the call will kind of get that it's yourself and Jess, the other kind of key person, I guess, the Housing Festival, and both of you guys bring such energy and optimism into that space. And I think Festival is kind of what you do. It's about bringing people together in a space to have kind of grown-up conversations and debate and discussions and things, but also to kind of celebrate the wonderful kind of resource within the city and the ideas and the people and the creativity we have as well. And I know that because I think when I first came across the festival, it was literally like a festival space, wasn't it, where you were showcasing the newest kind of latest modular housing and things like that. And I also think, am I right in thinking that the festival was sort of a 5-year project initially?
Yeah, absolutely.
So why are you kind of coming to the end of that time, and what are you hoping to kind of embed in the city if you're not going to stay around forever? Yeah,
great question. So I think festival, because it was essentially a festival, we had a space within the city which had, barriers around it, and it was for all intents and purposes a 2-week festival, as you would expect. The name Bristol Housing Festival became a bit of a difficulty for us. Like, it was a bit of a misnomer, because actually, as you say, the intention was that it was a 5-year project, sort of a bit of a research evaluation. Let's have a go and see if we can make a difference in any of these things space. And the word festival then almost helped articulate our intention around, let's create a positive narrative. Let's start to look at reframing this conversation into something that is positive, that makes the most of and celebrates all those good things that are going on in the city and all those amazing people that are doing incredible things, rather than going, it's all a drama and it's all horrible and like, we're never going to fix it. Actually, you're never going to fix it if that's what you believe. So how can we start to change that narrative? So it wasn't intended to be a 5-year festival. And the idea was that if we hadn't managed to make an impact in 5 years, there's no point us carrying on, and we should all just pack up and go get real jobs. But I think the end of the 5 years comes to the end, technically October 23. I don't think we'll disappear on the 1st of October 2023. I think we're already starting to think about, okay, what does the next phase look like? What's the transition from here? I definitely don't think we will continue doing the same things that we've been doing over these last few years on into the future in the same way, but I don't think we're going anywhere fast, if that makes sense. So I think we're starting to look at actually, if this really has, and I think it has, started to make a difference in Bristol. There are modular MMC schemes being built out in Bristol, some that are already being lived in, award-winning schemes across the city, which is really exciting. And more than that, Bristol City Council is starting to get a bit of a reputation for being an innovator, which actually is amazing. How do you now take that to the next level? If we think about this isn't just a Bristol City Council crisis, this is a national crisis. How do we take the learnings from Bristol and make them available and help them to start to affect change elsewhere across the region, the west of England, the southwest and beyond? And I think that will be probably the focus of the next phase.
Yeah, and we hope you don't disappear, that's for sure. And I think, you know, you're right, that kind of legacy of using Bristol as a space where, you know, innovation, we're kind of attracting innovation from other places and being able to experiment within the city. I think we are lucky that, you know, to be in Bristol and to have that kind of opportunity here.
Yeah, and Bristol definitely, it has that reputation and it has that history, doesn't it, of being a place where things are piloted or come out first, and then more often than not, it travels down the M4 to London and then it spreads out across the country. So Bristol has that history and that legacy. So we're hoping we can jump on that bandwagon.
Yeah, for sure. Jessie, I'll just maybe change tack a little bit, and there's a few questions come in. So what I'll do is I'll ask you one of these questions, I think, and then we might move on to into Lara's kind of bit, and then I think we'll sort of have a bit of a group, maybe kind of panel Q&A towards the end of the time today. So Rob's got a question here for you, and maybe I'll just ask Rob actually to unmute and ask the question himself.
Yeah, Jessie, I was thinking that the way you were describing about working with all these multiple stakeholders was a bit like Julie was describing as well, in a completely different context. For you, what's the hardest thing about leading this kind of collaborative change?
That's a really good question. I think it's sort of a two-edged sword, because it's the best thing as well, and that's the people. And I think it's the fact that, you know, people often say housing would be easy if there weren't people involved, and it is that actually the opportunity is in the people. It's real relationships. It's remembering that real people live in the houses that we're going to end up building. It's real people behind the policies and behind the learning. It's real people that are behind the planning department or the red tape that is preventing us doing the thing that I've been like banging on about for a while. It's remembering that they're real people. And actually, but also that's the best place, because it's the real people that actually have all the really brilliant ideas and the solutions and the ways around. And so the challenge is how do you enable those people to bring the best, to bring the innovation, to bring the solutions and the resources, rather than setting up a situation where people feel they need to shut down and be defensive. And that's really difficult, because you can't be in control of all the time, of all the people and all of the other people and how they interact. So it's definitely a bit of a kind of balancing act. And I think that is the best and the worst of the job.
Thanks, Jessie. No, it's really interesting, isn't it? It's not the tasks, it's kind of remembering the effect you can have on people's lives and keeping it in mind. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Thanks, Jessie. It is funny, isn't it? I think if you can create environments where people can thrive, then I think innovation can thrive. Maybe that's something to think about. So what we'll do now is I think we'll move across to Hannah, who's going to have sort of be in conversation with Lara, and then we'll make some time as well for some more Q&A at the end. So yeah, we'll do that. So over to you, Hannah.
Excellent, thank you so much. And Jess, it was so interesting just listening to you, and it made it very interesting to hear, you know, how we've been talking about making little bits of change might be easier than heading up one big change. And I thought the idea of you coming and saying it's a festival and it's only 5 years makes it so much, it feels a lot easier to tackle. And I guess those little things do end up making maybe the biggest change a little bit at a time. But I'd now like to introduce Lara, wherever Lara. Don't know if
Hello.
you have your video on. Hiya. How are you doing? Thank you for joining us.
No problem.
So lovely. Would you like to give a little bit of an introduction on yourself?
Yeah, I kind of came up with a massive introduction because I thought it was going to be 10 to 12 minutes, so mine's a bit long, but I will try and truncate it for most of you. But yeah, I kind of wanted you to all kind of close your eyes for a minute and imagine what it was like to be a teenager, right around that sweet spot of 14 to 16 years old, and remember what it was like. For me, and I think for most people, it was anxiety driven with lots of social pressure and lots of worrying about what your friends were doing or even what you were doing. And if you're a parent, you may bear witness to these teenage years and this teenage angst, and I do wish you the very best of luck with that. The reason why I bring that up is that approximately 4.3 out of 11.3 million 10 to 24-year-olds are currently experiencing poverty in the UK. Free school meals are an indicator of this poverty, and those receiving them are around 18 to 21 months behind their non-disadvantaged peers. Families cannot afford basic needs, let alone additional tuition to help their struggling children. But we know tuition can change lives. It can accelerate the progress in a child's education by up to 5 months. And the reason why I'm here today is to talk about Creative Tuition Collective, which is an organisation, which is a non-profit that I've set up because we deliver tuition to lower income families for free. We offer 1 hour tuition a week with tutors that are meant to be mentors as well as teachers. And we ask the teachers to have ideas of how to change and update their teaching techniques. And this form of disruptive innovation in education is kind of a catalyst to bringing a more equitable access to high quality education. And so we don't just do that. We offer workshops, and these workshops are helping to build the skills within young people and to really help plug that STEM skills shortage gap that we're experiencing. So we're hopefully teaching life skills like money management, things like how to network, what science means, just getting them to self-explore as well is really important to us. And another thing that we want to do, the reason why we want to increase the networking that children experience is because young people who are from disadvantaged backgrounds, they tend to not have a large scientific capital, which means they don't have a lot of people in their lives or know of a lot of people in their lives that could help them with job applications, CVs, and the ways to get into university, even understanding what a PhD is. Like, I didn't understand what a PhD was. So we want to be that, providing that advice and that support to young people so they can have a clear idea of their career aspirations. And also we get them to challenge who they want to be, not just what. We also offer mental health and well-being as part of the sessions. So we offer from 2 professional trained therapists, we offer group sessions where the young people are meant to come and talk about their life, really help with that teenage angst that they all experience. And yeah, just hopefully help their mental well-being. I'm going to stop there because I know that there's going to be questions, but there are many other things that we do that I can allude to in a little bit. But yeah, that's the premise of it. I will say one more. Sorry. Yeah, no, we obviously are constantly asking for support from our community, and it's really great to be here today and hear about the housing project and the NHS, because those are such important things. So I just wanted to say thank you for inviting me, and I look forward to more discussion.
No, it's so lovely having you on here. And also, I didn't know if you wanted to drop a link in the chat about it. But yeah, no, it sounds like you're doing so many things and tackling so many, like James said, so many important things. But I was just wondering, how, with this massive breadth of things, have you managed to sort of choose education or launch it in a streamlined way to make people aware or know what you're there for or doing for them? How do you sort of frame that to, I guess, make a breakthrough rather than lots of little things going not so far?
Yeah, I don't know if I have done that. I think for me it's death by 1,000 cuts, because for in my opinion, well, the whole thing has started because I just didn't believe that education should be behind a paywall, or a good quality education. And neither, I didn't think mental health services should also be behind a paywall if you wanted to receive it quicker. So I guess for me, we do loads of little things in the space to kind of highlight what we do. And we take a multi-pronged approach is what I'd say. But the core of it is the workshops, the mental health support and the tuition. That's what we support and we really push for, because that's the most important part of developing the young people. For personally, we don't, what my push through is that we don't actually care about the grades of the children. We're hoping to build their confidence. When I was younger, I did dancing, I did loads of other things, and I also had tutors, and the tutors enabled me to feel confident in myself to do the subject. You know, when you get that one good teacher and you're like, okay, I can do this now. And we all, I don't know, I hope we all have a memory of at least one teacher where they made you feel like you were great at what you were doing. And I guess that's where I want, yeah, exactly, they're very powerful, teachers are very powerful. And so that's kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted to be that that entity that would push them to be more confident, and through that improve their grades. You know what I mean? We don't want to start with improving or worrying about the grades improving, because I feel like that's kind of what the current government do, and it's not really working in terms of disrupting and allowing more students to push through. A lot of, in particular tackling mental health, a lot of young people that are excluded are suffering from poor mental health, and so it's tackling that issue as well. So I would say that is kind of we're tackling a lot of things, but we have volunteers doing each of them, and they're hopefully contributing to this not pyramid scheme, but a pyramid of a foundation, and then growing up from that. I don't think that
sure, no, and it's
yeah,
no, it's interesting, and it's also interesting that theme again, how Jessie said, resonating with people, and that's how you're coming in. It sounds like very much so, you want that teacher that they've got, and providing that person for them to help them build their confidence.
Exactly.
You also said, I was going to say, you also said use a multi-pronged approach, and it's just sort of thinking, in this theme of disruptive innovation, would you say that kind of approach is how you've done it differently? Do you think that's why you've creative tuition has taken off, or would you say, what?
No,
would you like to expand on?
Yeah, no, of course. So one of the ways in which we've been able to support creative tuition, and this is another approach, we did some work with the British Antarctic Survey, and we did some research with them, with two fantastic social scientists, to look at how to create an inclusive STEM environment. And so they created a program called Polar Horizons, which honestly, I've experienced it, and it was the most beautiful moment being in STEM and being able to say I'm gay and not feel weird about it. And I also have other people say they were gay and not feel weird about it. It was a really strange experience. And so it's explaining why those areas and spaces are so important to people who are marginalized. And that has helped us grow, because it's supported us in other ways as well. So having this approach of doing research and doing loads of little projects has all collectively supported the tuition. Currently now we're looking for sponsors within the STEM businesses, and also people as well, and we have different things set up. So that's another approach to help supporting us. But generally, I cannot wait to keep doing, because I'm a scientist, I'm a PhD student doing chemistry at the University of Bristol. So any kind of research explaining and allowing us to understand life is really important, and how people exist. And I think creative tuition was started on the basis of that. It was okay, so let's have a hypothesis of how do we create a supportive educational space for young people that they feel like they can thrive within, and don't feel pressure, but also feel that they actually are achieving. And also, how do we do that in a sustainable, supportive way? So for example, how do we make sure that people with disabilities are equally as supported as people with BME, even though I don't have expertise in being a person with disabilities, you know what I mean? So it's making sure we have all of those nuggets in there. And that's what we're kind of working on doing constantly. We're trying to bring more and more people on who have expertise in certain areas. And I think that's what's disruptive about it, is like, I don't claim to ever be the expert in anything. I want to work with community members who are experts in what they do and bring that into creative tuition. And so, yeah, it's more of a community, hopefully it's going to become a more of a community-based social enterprise where we can all contribute our own expertise in a way that can help bolster and build their children's confidence. I shouldn't say children, young people. Young
yeah, wow. Yeah, no, it definitely that people power. And I think, you know, so much of the world, I mean, I'm not to say, but, you know, I think so much of the world is lacking that collaboration. You know, you're saying all the expertise is spread out. I mean, where is that in, government listening to everyone, spreading out people's expertise elsewhere and all ages? So no, I think that's really, really interesting. And also, you know, that idea of changing perspective and looking at your issue as a hypothesis or something like that. Just wondering what the main struggles that you feel has been to get where you are today with.
I think, well, that's a big question, because where do we start? But in terms of, are you talking in terms of creative tuition or in terms of my personal life?
Just sort of creative tuition, but I guess shape it how.
Yeah, I
sort of link it to some sort of advice. I don't know. Yeah.
No, that's fair. I think the biggest thing with creative tuition is the fact that, like, as we said, it started as like a hypothesis, like, could we do this? Like, is this possible? And is this the right way to do it? Because the whole point of innovation is questioning what you've done. Is it okay? Is it working? Okay, no, it's not, change it. And so it's like adapting us towards our community, because I'm from London, I don't know the community as well. And so it's adapting and constantly innovating. And so I guess the pilot was great because we got some funding for that, but then keeping that going and making sure there's a sustainable like way of growing and keeping on going and supporting the young people, I think that's going to be the biggest barrier, because there's many different ways of supporting charities, but like, I'm a social enterprise, so I don't necessarily adhere to that charity giving. But the reason why I wanted to have the ownership is so eventually we would be able to have young people have shares in the company, so that they can build their own kind of pot scheme thing. But like, I think that's the problem, is like slightly growing it beyond the startup stage. It's just going to take a couple more years and expertise. But I think that's the biggest barrier. And also surprisingly, not that the teenagers are a problem, but it's again engaging with them. I think they've been so disenfranchised by school. They've been like, oh, learning is so boring and they have to do it. And we're coming in and saying, no, like, learning is fun. Like, you should have enjoyed school. You should feel this passion. You should like be directed into the place. If you like music, okay, let's do music with a little bit of maths, but like with music, if you're passionate about it. Like, that's what we want to come in and say. But they're so used to teachers talking at them, obviously not all teachers, but like not really integrating them into the curriculum, and not really making them feel the joy within that subject. And so I think that's also a problem, because getting them to be like, no, we are different and we will help you, and like bring your energy when there's not a lot of energy to be had around is quite difficult. But I'm really excited about changing that around, because I know we have the energy to do it. I know we have the passion to do it. So I'm really excited about and COVID obviously has made everyone distant. I don't know about everyone, but I think young people are hating Zoom right now. They're like, oof, we don't want to be on Zoom. So I think having them in person would be the next thing, an iteration in which we can, again, kind of gauge how they're feeling and kind of gauge how to help them in the best way.
No, interesting. Yeah. And I guess it is, again, going back to the people and the feeling behind it, and trying to facilitate those emotions of exciting and confidence one in one. So no, amazing what you're doing. I just thought to open it up with 2 questions from other people, unless you had anything else that you wanted to.
Oh no. I mean, part of what was great about like working on creative tuition was like realizing, again, part of education that wasn't being talked about was the digital accessibility. So I just wanted to highlight the fact that we have started to work with the university about providing like desktops to places like the Somali Centre and things like that, as well as we've worked with providing laptops to local schools to help with their technology literacy. And so, yeah, just to say that that was another kind of part of what we did and part of what we want to continue, because yeah, digital accessibility is so important, but around 10,000 students in Bristol still don't have that basic accessibility, which is, yeah. So like what I'm saying is, by sponsoring us, there's a lot of things that we are doing to help the community in different ways.
Yeah, and I guess that's a first step to get them involved anyway, for them to be able to see
exactly like, and actually have laptops at work. And it's not even about having a laptop in the family, it's about like having time on the laptop, like having valuable time to like explore, code, and they don't have that. So the ability to code and the ability to use their laptops for like their educational needs rather than having to share it with their brothers and sisters is so important to me. And so yeah, we're working with the university to get out 250 laptops and then also offering computer science tuition as well, which we're really proud about, and we're offering that to 2 schools with around 70% BME population. So like, yeah, it's like things like that. I like projects like that I'm really proud of us doing, because I never thought I'd get to that point where I could offer any kind of help like that, but we've grown to that point where people will come to us and ask us to participate with them in like schemes like this. So super proud of that.
No, it's incredible what you're doing. So thank you for sharing with us all. And just to open it up for questions, Hannah, Beatrice, would you like to ask your question? Lara, or I can pop it out there.
I can't see the question. That's okay. I'll read that.
That's all right. I can. So, I'm sorry.
Hello. Sorry, I was just putting my headphones back on. Yeah. So I was just wondering, because I've worked with projects where we're trying to reach young people and get young people to, and these projects have been available for free to give young people the opportunity to learn skills that they wouldn't otherwise have access to. And one of the struggles that we had was actually reaching the young people. And often, I mean, you were saying that young people didn't want to be on Zoom, but I was wondering if that might make it easier, really, because what I found in Bristol is young people don't necessarily want to move from their area to another area to go and do something, to go and do an activity, because there's this kind of feeling that they're all, you know, they're in their community and they don't want to cross over into another community. So yeah, I was just wondering how you're actually going about reaching the young people, and how you found that, whether that's been a challenge, and whether these services are open to everyone, and how do you, if not, because I imagine that there's probably restrictions on resources, how do you work out who you can offer the services to?
All great questions.
Yeah.
So first of all, yes, it's been hard getting them online. It's been really difficult, and I think what I'm trying to do now is use the links that are already out there. So use community groups and all work together. And okay, so you've got these group of students, would they like to come and like go through a money management course? But it's also making it sound attractive, because money management doesn't sound that attractive. But if you say like how to buy your Nikes or something like that, or how to buy your Jordans, it might be a little bit more attractive. Not that everyone wants Jordans, but I did. And so yeah, it's like it's making it more attractive to them. So yeah, I do understand the struggle. Like we're currently working with the Trinity Centre about providing a physical space, because some of our workshops are going to be in person, and I do have a massive worry about the like people coming out of their area, and we're hoping it's kind of centre enough that like people can. But yeah, like it is going to be a struggle, and I think especially COVID has made people more insular and more like within their own homes and within their own areas, because it's safe. It's a safe space. I think making sure that like you're ensuring, well, for them, they feel like it's going to be another safe space. They feel like it's going to be a place they can grow and meet other people, would be a good way to go. I think also leaning on people that have been doing it for ages. So like there's Project Zazi, there's OTR, like maybe getting in contact with them and saying, okay, so I'm having this problem, or students aren't coming. How would you do this? And setting up partnership with them, so that every time they do a session, they can talk about what you're doing, you know? And so having those partnerships with different community groups so that you're highlighted to them, I think is another good way to go.
Yeah, I think the safe space thing is really important, definitely. I just had another question as well, because everyone I know with school age children, I think definitely would like to see the system changing.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's generally the response you receive, or if you've had any kind of pushback on this as an idea, and if so, kind of what's that been? And
no,
maybe that's kind of a deep question.
No, it's really not, and I can answer that. So essentially, how you asked about how we selected students. So we contacted majority, like we said, like high percentage BME or high percentage lower income students from schools, and we asked teachers to nominate them because we thought teachers knew their students the best. It's not the best system. Parents could also nominate students, but like they had to at least have free school meals or have be a part of one marginalized group. And it's just not to say like free school meals is an indicator of poverty. However, I didn't receive free school meals, and still like we weren't affluent, you know what I mean? So like it's still trying to get those people that don't have the opportunity to receive free tuition. So that was that. Now we're currently going to be moving into people that have been kicked out of school. So we're hoping to set up a school or kind of a physical space where they can come and learn like maths and English and STEM, but also receive the workshops and the mental health support as part of our scheme. Because like loads of people, the people I'm working with, they've seen this, they want a change, they're screaming for a change, but obviously the education system isn't kind of working for them in that way. And so what they want to do is create a space for their children that is safe, that is calm, that is nurturing, and doesn't require them to do 1,000 things a day in order to feel like they're valid, and to make them feel like they're like not just a number, which I think our current system does. It makes you feel like you're just another person and can be easily replaced, whereas we want to put the value back in the individual. So yeah, we want to work with people that have been school leavers, and I think that's how we're going to be like judging line. And like I said, like working, so for example, I won't always be able to do the skills workshop. So if we would work with organizations such as yours to deliver that's something I would like to do. So it's like segmenting parts of what we do off to people that have specialized in that area, and using our networks to encourage that, because I think that's the most important thing, is getting people who want to do it in a way that they can, I guess, progress us as well. I think I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's links up quite well with what I think Caroline was asking as well, about how we can actually, Caroline, I don't know if you wanted to ask a question, because it's about how we can help you, and I think that kind of links.
Yeah, I think I was thinking about what James said about act and do, and we can chat, but it would be good if people knew specifically, Lara, what do you want? How can individuals in this group help you? And sometimes you've got to say it out loud before people know. So, I mean, we all love Lara, and we can all kind of shout and support her stuff all over social media and everything else, but she also needs practical help. So this is an opportunity, I think, by this question to say practically exactly what can these people on this call do for you?
Oh, no, thank you, Caroline. I love that. I think sponsorship is the most important thing. So you can sponsor a student for £12.50 a month, which would cover them for a week's worth of tuition up until like the full program, which would be around £213 a month. And so, we're looking for that range, and we're about to launch that on our social media platform. So I think sharing that, also possibly being a sponsor would be great. Like I said, we have different packages, but also highlighting any corporate sponsorships, kind of schemes or partnerships that I could possibly go down, because I'm looking for local STEM companies to sponsor students, between 5 and 15 students, to do a whole year's program. And they can also look to supporting our career sessions, and again, no equal promotion. But like a sponsorship is the most important thing to us right now, and making sure that we can get as many young people through that door and experiencing what we do in a sustainable, obviously controllable way. And I can, if you go to our website, we have a link to our GoFundMe, so you can sponsor via that way. But like I said, if you wait, I think around about a week, we should be launching our sponsorship kind of scheme. Equally, if you want to email me and say, I know so-and-so who could support you, that would be amazing. And even if you want to support me in giving me your expertise and how to grow a social enterprise, also would love that. Not a lot.
Can I, is the sponsorship the same as also, because you said as well you were looking for businesses to offer their like expertise and maybe even come in and help you with kind of training the young people?
Yeah.
Is that, would it be the sponsors who would also get involved in that side of it, or is that
Yeah, they can do, or they can be separate. Like I said, we're not just looking for, like, sponsorship is a great thing, but also expertise can just be equally as lucrative.
Yeah.
And support in that way. If you could take something off my hands and do it really well, and I could trust you to do that, that would also be brilliant, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's creating, making sure that everything's diverse and inclusive and all the things like that.
Amazing.
Nice. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Sorry, Hannah. Yeah, I mean, I'll just jump in here.
No,
So
no worries.
thanks, Hannah. Thank you, Lara. A lot of love for Lara on the chat. So have a read through that, Lara. And yeah, a lot really inspiring the work you're doing, and inspiring from all the speakers we've heard from, Jessie and Julia as well. So Julia's had to shoot off, unfortunately, but we've still got Jessie and Lara here. So I wanted to kind of just try and open it up a little bit. And move into maybe some more general kind of discussion and allow people to input some points. And I'm just reading through the chat, and I can see that JP and Marissa have kind of been having a little bit of a thread going on. I think it's a really interesting one, and it's about kind of these moments of insight for people leading disruptive innovation. And I wonder, JP, if you just wanted to just maybe put the point across, and we can maybe ask Jessie and Lara to respond to that.
Ka-thunk, that's me going under the bus. Yeah, my question really is that, you know, it's brilliant to have such diversity of people's experiences in the room. It's a rare thing to get, because usually we kind of gravitate to our tribes, and, you know, that's where we're trying to move the needle. So to have the like of Big, where we can come together looking out of lots of different windows and then go, crikey, we've got lots of common issues actually when you break it down to the fundamentals. And one of the fundamentals that we were having a little sidebar conversation on is, you know, very often, no matter what area you're working in, you're dealing with elements of silo behavior. And sometimes that can just be a frame of mind. It can be, you know, a fixed mindset, or it can be, you know, a very ego-driven thing, or it could be very territorial because it's very personal, emotional in the case of, you know, when you're dealing with somebody's backyard, by way of example. So there's lots and lots of ways that you can get into silo behavior. And I just thought it would be interesting if there's anything within the group in terms of big aha moments that we've had where we break through those aspects of silo behavior, because those are the things that stop us from implementing what could be very good, innovative ideas. You know, COVID has shown us that if we've got a burning platform, you know, 6 or 7 billion people can change overnight lots of really intractable behavior. And there's been obviously loads of people talk about purpose and sweet spots with regard to a driver for innovation and change. So, you know, those are sort of like big things that are kind of known about, but I just thought it might be interesting to see if anybody had any experience where they've had intractable silo behavior and then managed to break through, and if there's any learning for any of us out of any of that.
Thanks, JP. Maybe I can invite Jessie as one of our guests to maybe respond to that first. But yeah, other people on the call, please do maybe put your hand up and raise your hand if you'd like to add to it.
Yeah, I mean, I've got so many thoughts on this. I think you're absolutely right. Like siloed behavior, siloed thinking is just sort of part and parcel for what is normal in business, in culture, it is just the way we sort of seem to work, isn't it? And For us, particularly looking at innovation in housing, one of the big things we wanted to try and tackle immediately was that idea of siloed thinking, because you did have the politicians and the policymakers sitting in one place, you had the house builders and the developers sitting in another place, you had the kind of subcontractors and the traditional house builders that were the supply chain in another thing, and there wasn't conversation between them, let alone then having the conversations between them and who actually is going to live in the houses long term. And the way that we've started to, I wouldn't like to say that we've done this, completely 100%, I've got it sorted by any stretch of the imagination, but we have started to make an impact, and particularly on some of our events, some of the feedback we've got is that it's been an unusual mix in terms of breaking down some of those silos. And for us, I think it's been around celebration, and it's about how can we celebrate what is going on across lots of different organizations and lots of different people's wins, without that being because how oftentimes when somebody has a win, that's obviously then like a loss for someone else. Because if it's contract work, for example, if somebody's won it, somebody's lost it. So how do you have a culture of celebration and a narrative where you can celebrate everybody's wins in a way that isn't about somebody else missing out? And I think that's been our kind of real challenge. And we're slightly in an unusual position because we're not fighting for any of that work, because we're this sort of middle organization, this enabler. We're not necessarily funded by any one particular person, which is a challenge in its own right. But, sure, that it's meant that we can champion and celebrate lots of different organizations and lots of different people's wins, which has enabled, I think, the Housing Festival to be a bit of a safe space for a lot of different organisations, which has enabled that kind of breaking down of silos. But I think that has been a real key for us.
I think the silos in terms of education is interesting. Rob, I know you put your hand up, but I'm just going to contribute quickly. Within education, especially because of colonialism, it has separated a lot of the departments into separate entities, and such that, like, in chemistry, you have no idea what's happening in biology, you have no idea what's happening in physics. They all have their own achievements and everything separately. And so one of the things that we're doing is decolonizing the curriculum. And in that, decolonization in itself is about disruption, and it's about making sure that people aren't staying in their own little groups. They have to talk about each other because it's about shared expertise. And so I think creating a bridge in which people can cross equally over, which for me is decolonization, is really important. And that's how you get people talking, because you have to have one goal, especially in academia. You have to have one central goal that you're aiming towards. And decolonization is a really great way of allowing the different departments to talk. So I know it's not business, but I feel like nowadays universities are operating more like a business. So I think I hopefully have answered that in the way that I can. But yeah, creating avenues where you can talk and celebrate. And one of the things that we wanted to do is start an e-magazine, which will celebrate different departments, like goals and what they've done in their lives and their journeys. And that's to highlight to young people that, like, we are an interdisciplinary, forward-focused kind of entity. Even though right now we're not, we could move into the space where someone from social sciences can easily come and talk to someone from chemistry and set up a project together. It's that cohesive nature that we don't currently have, which we're trying to foster. And creative tuition does actually help with that. But yeah, that I'd say, like, creating avenues for communication is really important. I hope that answers your question.
Sorry, so I'll pass over to Rob at this point, I think, because we're rapidly getting to the end of our session.
There's much more to talk about, isn't there, everyone? But we've got about 29 seconds. I think, can we first of all unmute ourselves and give a really big round of applause, and even a whoop if you want to our speakers, including Julia. Thank you so much, Julia, Jessie, Lara. Really, really fantastic. A couple of other things all. So this is the first event of 2022 for the big network. We're planning more, right? Connecting social events, content events. It's a little bit dependent on what we can do, of course. You know the story. If you don't belong to the LinkedIn network, please do that. Maybe somebody can drop again the link in the chat. If you want to be on our email distribution list and you're not at the moment, send us your email, drop it in the chat or send it to one of us and we'll make sure it's there. We have a lot planned for the rest of 2022. Look, and other than that, I think we're about out of time. Some of us are just going to hang around for a little bit longer if you want to, but lots of you might have to disappear as well. Thanks for joining us, audience. Without you, it would be a really small chat with a handful of us. So thanks all. And I think we're done. James, Charlie, anyone else? Have I forgotten anything? Hannah?
Okay, Rob. Great to see everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Thanks all.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. It's been really great to be part of the conversation.
Thanks, everyone.